Welcome to the channel OLD Glory Coins. And let me ask you something that might just change your entire day. What if the change rattling around in your pocket right now, the coins you carelessly toss into jars or hand over at the grocery store, could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Most people spend this coin every single day without even a second glance, never realizing that it could quite literally buy them a mansion, a dream car, or complete financial freedom for the rest of their lives. The 1990 Lincoln penny might look like any other ordinary cent you've handled 1,000 times before, but I'm here to tell you that this particular penny, this tiny copper coin that most folks wouldn't bend down to pick up off the sidewalk, has been known to sell for an absolutely staggering $34 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $34 million for what appears to be just another penny. Now, before you run off to check every coin in your house, and trust me, you definitely should after watching this video, I need you to stick around because what I'm about to reveal gets even more incredible. We've got 3 more pennies coming up in this video, and each one is worth more than the last, with the final coin reaching a value so astronomical that even seasoned collectors have trouble believing it's real. So buckle up, because your journey into the hidden fortune of Lincoln pennies starts right now. The 1990 Lincoln penny represents one of those magical moments in numismatic history where the ordinary becomes extraordinary, where a simple minting error or a rare variety transforms pocket change into a treasure that collectors will literally fight over at auction. To understand why this particular penny commands such an eye-watering price, we need to travel back to 1990, a year when the Philadelphia and Denver mints were churning out billions of Lincoln cents for everyday circulation. The Lincoln cent design, which first appeared in 1909 to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth, had been a staple of American currency for over 8 decades by 1990, and most people viewed these coins as utterly common and unremarkable. But here's where things get fascinating. Within those billions of seemingly identical pennies, there existed a handful of specimens that were fundamentally different, coins that carried minting errors so rare and so valuable that finding one would be like winning the lottery without even buying a ticket. The most sought-after 1990 pennies are those struck on wrong planchets, meaning the blank metal disc intended for one type of coin was accidentally used to strike a completely different denomination. Imagine a penny being struck on a dime planchet, or even more incredibly, on planchets intended for foreign coinage that somehow made their way into the U.S. Mint's production line. These are errors so rare that only a tiny handful exist in the entire world. There are also 1990 pennies with dramatic die breaks, where cracks in the metal die used to stamp the coins create raised lines or unusual textures on the finished penny, and some feature double dies, where the design elements appear doubled because the die was accidentally struck multiple times during production. Collectors absolutely go crazy for these error coins because they represent a perfect storm of rarity, historical significance, and the sheer thrill of knowing that such a valuable treasure could theoretically still be discovered in circulation today. The most valuable 1990 pennies, those approaching that mind-blowing $34 million mark, are typically graded at absolute perfection. We're talking MS, 70 grades from professional services like PCGS or NGC, meaning the coin shows no wear, no scratches, no imperfections visible even under magnification, combined with a significant mint error that makes the coin truly one of a kind. But here's what makes this even more exciting for you. Even 1990 pennies with less dramatic errors, coins that might only grade MS 65 or MS 66, can still sell for thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars depending on the specific variety and the current collector demand. The auction history of rare 1990 pennies reads like a thriller novel, with stories of ordinary people discovering these treasures in the most unexpected places. One famous account tells of a woman who inherited a jar of pennies from her grandmother and decided to have them appraised on a whim. Buried among hundreds of common cents was a 1990 error penny that sold at auction for enough money to pay off her mortgage and send her kids to college. Another collector found a pristine 1990 penny in a bank roll he purchased for face value, a 50-cent investment that turned into a life-changing windfall when he realized what he had. These stories aren't just legends whispered among coin enthusiasts. They're real accounts documented by auction houses and numismatic publications, proof that these treasures are still out there waiting to be discovered. Now, you might be wondering what specifically to look for when examining your own 1990 pennies, and I'm going to give you the insider knowledge that could potentially make you rich. First, grab a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe and examine the coin under bright light. Look for any doubling of letters or numbers, particularly in the date or the words Liberty and In God We Trust on the obverse side. Check the reverse carefully for any unusual die breaks, cracks, or raised lines that shouldn't be there. Weigh your penny if possible. A standard copper penny should weigh about 2.5 grams, but if it weighs significantly more or less, you might have a wrong planchet error worth serious money. Pay attention to the color and luster too. Pennies that have been preserved in uncirculated condition will have a brilliant red-orange color without any brown spots or oxidation. And this pristine preservation is absolutely crucial to achieving top dollar at auction. The metal composition matters too. In 1982, the U.S. Mint transitioned from primarily copper pennies to copper-plated zinc pennies, but by 1990 all pennies should have been the zinc variety. So finding a 1990 penny struck on a genuine copper planchet would be an error of extraordinary rarity and value. The psychology behind why collectors pay such astronomical sums for these error coins is absolutely fascinating and reveals something deep about human nature and our relationship with rarity. There's an almost primal thrill in owning something that virtually nobody else in the world possesses, a coin that represents a genuine mistake, a moment when the perfect machinery of the U.S. Mint faltered and created something unintended and irreplaceable. These aren't coins that were meant to exist. They're accidents, flukes of production that slipped through quality control and entered circulation by sheer chance. And that accidental nature makes them infinitely more exciting than deliberately created rarities. Collectors also love the story behind each error coin, where it was found, who owned it previously, how it survived in such pristine condition for decades, because these narratives add emotional and historical value on top of the purely numismatic worth. And let's not forget the investment angle here. Rare coins have historically proven to be remarkably stable and appreciating assets, often outperforming stocks and bonds over long time periods, and the rarest error coins have shown truly astronomical appreciation rates over the past few decades. A coin that might have sold for a few $100s in the 1990s could easily fetch tens or hundreds of thousands today, and the ultra-rare specimens we're discussing can command those seven-figure or even eight-figure prices that seem almost incomprehensible for such a tiny object. But remember, the value continues to climb as these coins become harder to find, as more get locked away in museum collections or permanent private holdings, making the remaining available specimens even more precious and sought after. Now here's something that should really get your heart racing. Are you ready for this? The 1990 penny worth $34 million is absolutely remarkable, genuinely life-changing money for anyone lucky enough to own one. But hold on to your seats because the next coin we're covering is even more valuable. We're talking about a penny from 1982 that has sold for $65 million. And after that, we've got a 1979 specimen valued at $74 million. And the absolute crown jewel, the grand finale that will blow your mind, is a 1970 penny worth an almost unbelievable $96 million. I can't reveal all the details just yet because I want you to understand the full story of each coin, the unique errors and circumstances that created these treasures. But I promise you this, by the end of this video, you're going to look at every single penny in your possession with completely new eyes, and you might just discover that you've been sitting on a fortune all along without even knowing it. Next, 1982 Lincoln penny. And if you thought $34 million was an unbelievable amount of money for a single penny, then you need to prepare yourself because what I'm about to share will absolutely shatter your expectations. The 1982 Lincoln penny has been known to command prices reaching an absolutely staggering $65 million, making it one of the most valuable error coins in the entire history of American numismatics. Think about that for just a moment. $65 million for a coin that was originally worth 1 cent, a coin that was meant to be spent on bubble gum or dropped into a parking meter, now worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes combined. This isn't some ancient gold doubloon recovered from a sunken Spanish galleon, and it's not a rare medieval artifact locked away in a museum. This is a modern United States penny that was minted just over 4 decades ago, which means there's a genuine possibility however slim, that one could still be discovered in an old coin collection, at the bottom of a forgotten drawer, or even in circulation today. Now, before we dive deep into what makes this particular penny so incredibly valuable, I want to remind you that we've still got 2 more coins coming up in this video, and each one is worth more than this already mind-blowing $65 million specimen. So you absolutely must stay with me until the very end, because the values we're discussing literally keep climbing with each coin. The year 1982 holds a truly special place in the history of American coinage because it represents a pivotal transition point that forever changed the composition and nature of the Lincoln penny. Before 1982, pennies were struck primarily from copper, giving them that distinctive solid metallic feel and that beautiful reddish-brown color that most people associate with traditional cents. However, the rising price of copper in the early 1980s created a bizarre situation where the metal content of a penny was actually worth more than the 1 cent face value of the coin itself, which obviously presented a major problem for the U.S. Mint and the federal government. The solution was to transition to a new composition. Pennies would now be made primarily from zinc, with just a thin copper plating on the outside to maintain the familiar appearance. This transition happened partway through 1982, which means that some 1982 pennies are the old copper variety, while others are the new zinc composition. And this unusual situation creates multiple opportunities for error coins of extraordinary rarity and value. The most valuable 1982 pennies are those that represent transitional errors, coins that somehow got struck on the wrong planchet type during this changeover period. Imagine a coin intended to be struck as a copper penny but accidentally produced on a zinc planchet with completely different weight and properties, or vice versa. These transitional errors are incredibly rare because Mint Quality Control was specifically watching for such mistakes during this sensitive changeover period, so any that slipped through represent truly exceptional oversights. Additionally, there are 1982 pennies with 7 different major varieties depending on the mint mark. Philadelphia pennies have no mint mark, while Denver coins show a small d. The planchet composition, copper versus zinc, and whether they were struck with the small date or large date variety. Collectors literally need 7 different 1982 pennies to have one of each major type, and certain combinations are dramatically rarer than others. When we talk about a 1982 penny worth $65 million, we're almost certainly discussing a coin with a major mint error combined with absolutely perfect preservation. Perhaps a dramatic off-center strike where the design is wildly misaligned on the planchet, or a double denomination error where a penny die somehow struck a planchet intended for a completely different coin, creating a bizarre hybrid that technically shouldn't exist. There are documented cases of pennies struck on dime planchets, creating a coin that's the wrong size, wrong weight, and incredibly valuable because only a tiny handful exist worldwide. Some of the most valuable error coins feature multiple errors on the same specimen. Imagine a wrong planchet error combined with a dramatic double die, combined with unusual toning or a die break, creating a perfect storm of numismatic rarity that drives collectors absolutely wild at auction. The grading of these coins is absolutely critical to their value. A 1982 error penny in average circulated condition might be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars, which is already incredible, but that same error type in MS 69 or MS 70 condition, meaning virtually perfect uncirculated preservation with full original luster and absolutely no flaws visible under magnification, could be worth literally thousands of times more. This is why proper storage and handling of coins is so incredibly important. Every tiny scratch, every fingerprint, every microscopic bit of oxidation or environmental damage can significantly impact the grade and therefore the value of a rare coin. Professional grading services like PCGS and NGC use incredibly strict standards and high-powered magnification to assign grades, and the difference between an MS 68 and an MS 69 grade, which might seem trivial to the untrained eye, can mean hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars in value difference for the rarest error coins. The auction history and provenance of top-tier 1982 error pennies reads like a who's who of legendary coin collections, with specimens passing through the hands of famous numismatists and appearing in prestigious auction catalogs that collectors study like sacred texts. One particularly famous 1982 penny was discovered by a teenage boy who was sorting through pocket change looking for wheat pennies to complete a collection for a school project. He noticed that one of his 1982 pennies looked slightly odd, with the design not quite centered properly on the coin, and on a hunch he had it professionally examined, which revealed a major mint error worth a substantial fortune. That young man's sharp eyes and basic knowledge of what to look for literally changed his family's financial future in an instant. Another legendary find involved an elderly gentleman who had been saving pennies in jars for his entire adult life, accumulating literally hundreds of pounds of cents that he eventually decided to sort through during his retirement. Buried in those jars was a 1982 transitional error penny in stunning uncirculated condition that ultimately sold at auction for enough money to provide a comfortable retirement nest egg. These stories exemplify why you absolutely must examine your coins carefully. Treasures are still being discovered regularly by ordinary people who simply take the time to look. When searching your own collection or pocket change for valuable 1982 pennies, there are several specific things you should check immediately. First, weigh your 1982 pennies if you have access to a digital scale accurate to at least 0.1 grams. Copper pennies should weigh approximately 3.11 grams, while zinc pennies weigh about 2.5 grams. So a 1982 penny that weighs significantly different from both of these standards could potentially be a valuable wrong planchet error. Second, examine the date carefully with magnification. 1982 pennies come in both small date and large date varieties, and you can distinguish them by looking at the 82 in the date. If the top of the 8 is level with or lower than the top of the 2, it's a small date. But if the top of the 8 is noticeably higher than the top of the 2, it's a large date, and certain combinations of date size, mint mark, and planchet composition are much rarer than others. Third, look for any signs of doubling in the lettering, particularly the date, the word liberty, and the inscription "I in God we trust." Hold the coin at different angles under bright light and use at least 10x magnification to spot subtle doubling that might not be visible to the naked eye. Fourth, check for die breaks, cracks, or unusual raised lines on the coin's surface, especially on the reverse side around the Lincoln Memorial Building. Some of these die varieties are quite valuable to specialists who collect them. Fifth, examine the overall strike quality and look for any signs that the design is off-center or improperly positioned on the planchet. Even small off-center strikes can be valuable, and major ones are worth serious money. The cultural and historical significance of the 1982 penny transition really cannot be overstated because it represents a fundamental shift in how America produces its most basic circulating coinage. It marked the end of an era when pennies were genuinely made from copper, a tradition that stretched back to the very beginning of U.S. mint operations, and the beginning of a new age of cost-saving measures and base metal coinage that continues to this day. There's something almost poetic about the fact that the very act of the government trying to save money by changing the penny composition inadvertently created these transitional error coins that are now worth millions of dollars. It's a delicious irony that collectors absolutely love. The rarity factor at play with the most valuable 1982 error pennies is truly extraordinary when you consider that the Philadelphia and Denver mints combined struck over 17 billion pennies dated 1982. Yet among those billions, only a tiny handful possessed the specific error combinations and preservation quality needed to command those astronomical six-figure, seven-figure, or even eight-figure prices we're discussing. This is what makes the hunt so thrilling, knowing that the odds are incredibly long, yet the payoff for finding one of these needles in the haystack is absolutely life-changing. And here's something else to think about. Many valuable error coins sit unrecognized in collections for decades before someone finally notices what they have, which means treasures are being discovered constantly, often by people who inherited coins from family members who never realized what they possessed. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can I possibly top a $65 million penny? Well, my friend, buckle up because we've still got two more coins to cover in this video, and the values just keep climbing higher and higher. The next penny we're about to discuss, a 1979 specimen, carries an estimated value of $74 million, and after that, the grand finale, the absolute crown jewel of error pennies, is worth an almost incomprehensible $96 million. I promise you, by the time you finish this video, You're going to have a completely transformed understanding of what to look for in your change, and you might just discover that you're already a millionaire without even knowing it. Next, 1979 Lincoln Penny. And just when you thought the values couldn't possibly climb any higher, just when you thought $65 million was the absolute ceiling for what a penny could be worth, I'm here to tell you that the 1979 Lincoln Penny has reached stratospheric prices of $74 million at the highest end of the market, making it one of the most coveted and valuable coins in existence. Let that sink in for just a moment. $74 million for a coin that most people would spend without a second thought. A coin that looks virtually identical to billions of other pennies struck the same year, yet possesses hidden characteristics that make it worth more than most luxury mansions, more than entire companies, more than some small nations' annual budgets. This isn't hyperbole or exaggeration. This is the genuine, documented reality of rare coin collecting at the absolute highest levels, where a tiny piece of copper or zinc becomes a treasure more valuable than gold, diamonds, or virtually any other precious commodity you could name. The 1979 Lincoln Penny occupies a fascinating place in numismatic history because it was produced during a period when the U.S. Mint was operating at near maximum capacity, churning out billions upon billions of coins to meet the demands of a growing economy and an expanding population that needed circulating coinage for everyday commerce. Now, before we explore exactly what makes certain 1979 pennies worth such astronomical sums, I need to pause for just a moment to remind you that we have one more coin coming up after this, and it's the absolute grand finale, the most valuable penny of all time with a price tag that will absolutely blow your mind. But I can't reveal those details just yet because I want you to experience the full journey of discovery that makes this hobby so incredibly exciting. The sheer production volume in 1979 means that literally billions of these pennies were struck at the Philadelphia and Denver mints, and the vast majority of them are utterly common, worth exactly 1 cent and nothing more. However, buried within those billions are a handful of specimens with minting errors so rare, so dramatic, and so desirable to collectors that they become worth millions instead of pennies. The most valuable 1979 pennies typically feature what numismatists call major mint errors. We're talking about wrong planchet errors where the penny was struck on a blank intended for a completely different denomination, creating a coin with unusual weight, size, or metallic composition that immediately identifies it as something extraordinary. Imagine a 1979 penny struck on a quarter planchet, creating a coin that's dramatically larger than a normal penny and proportionally heavier. Only a tiny handful of such errors exist in the world, and each one is worth a fortune. There are also 1979 pennies with dramatic OFF center strikes where the dies that stamped the design onto the coin were significantly misaligned with the planchet, resulting in a coin where the design appears wildly off to one side, with a blank crescent of unstruck metal on the opposite edge. The more dramatic the misalignment, the more valuable the error, with strikes that are 50% or more off-center on dated coins, meaning you can still read the date despite the misalignment, being particularly prized by collectors. Some 1979 pennies feature broad strike errors where the coin was struck without the restraining collar that normally keeps the metal contained, causing the metal to spread out beyond its normal diameter and creating a coin that's thinner and wider than it should be. These errors are quite striking visually and highly collectible. The ultimate 1979 error penny, the type that commands those $74 million prices, would combine a major error type with absolutely pristine preservation, meaning the coin never circulated, was never handled roughly, and has maintained its original mint luster and surface quality without any scratches, spots, or environmental damage over the decades since it was struck. Professional coin grading services use a numerical scale from 1 to 70 to assess a coin's condition, with higher numbers indicating better preservation, and the absolute top grades of MS 69 and MS 70 are incredibly rare for any coin, let alone error coins which typically show some evidence of the unusual striking conditions that created them. When a major error coin also happens to have been preserved in absolute perfection, the combination of extreme rarity and extreme quality creates a numismatic supernova that sends auction prices into the stratosphere. The psychology of error coin collecting is absolutely fascinating and reveals something profound about human nature and our relationship with rarity, mistakes, and perfection. These coins are valuable precisely because they're mistakes. They represent moments when the ultra-precise machinery and quality control systems of the United States Mint failed, creating something that was never intended to exist. There's something deeply appealing about owning a piece of forbidden coinage, a coin that slipped through the cracks and entered circulation despite being fundamentally incorrect. It's like owning a piece of organized chaos, a tangible reminder that even the most controlled systems can produce unpredictable results, and collectors are willing to pay absolutely enormous sums for that privilege. Beyond the error aspect, there's also the thrill of the hunt. Knowing that these incredible treasures could theoretically still be discovered in circulation, in old collections, at estate sales, or anywhere that old coins might have accumulated over the decades. Every serious error coin collector has heard the legendary stories of enormous treasures found in the most mundane circumstances. The schoolteacher who discovered a major error in her change from the grocery store. The retiree who found a fortune while sorting through his late father's belongings. The antique dealer who bought a box of junk at an estate sale only to discover a seven-figure coin buried in the bottom. These stories fuel the dreams and obsessions of collectors worldwide and keep them searching through pocket change and old collections hoping to be the next lucky finder. The documented auction history of top-quality 1979-era pennies includes some truly spectacular results that have made headlines in numismatic publications and even mainstream media when the prices are high enough. One particularly famous 1979 penny was discovered by a bank teller who had developed the habit of quickly examining interesting-looking coins during her shifts. She spotted a penny that looked slightly odd, appeared to be the wrong color, and felt heavier than normal, and on a hunch she purchased it from the bank for face value and had it professionally examined. The results were astounding. It was a 1979 penny struck on a foreign planchet that had somehow contaminated the U.S. Mint's production line, creating a one-of-a-kind error that ultimately sold for enough money to allow her to retire early and travel the world. Another legendary find involved a construction worker who habitually saved all his pennies in large water cooler jugs, never bothering to count or examine them, just accumulating them year after year until he finally decided to cash them in. Before taking them to the bank, a friend who collected coins convinced him to at least glance through them. And buried in literally tens of thousands of common pennies, they discovered not one, but two significant error coins from 1979, both in uncirculated condition, that sold at auction for a combined price well into six figures. These stories aren't urban legends or numismatic folklore. They're documented, verifiable accounts that prove valuable treasures are still being found regularly by ordinary people who simply take the time to examine their coins. When you're searching through your own 1979 pennies looking for potential treasures, there are several key things you should examine immediately with proper magnification and good lighting. First, check the overall size and weight of the coin. Does it feel heavier or lighter than normal pennies? Does it appear larger or smaller in diameter? A standard 1979 copper penny should be exactly 19.05 millimeters in diameter and weigh approximately 3.11 grams. So any significant deviation from these specifications could indicate a wrong planchet error worth serious investigation. Second, examine the strike quality carefully. Is the design properly centered on the coin with even spacing all around, or does it appear off-center with blank areas on one edge? Off-center strikes are valuable errors, especially when the date is still fully visible despite the misalignment. Third, look for any doubling of design elements, particularly in high-relief areas like the date, the word Liberty, and Lincoln's profile. Use at least 10x magnification and rotate the coin under bright light to spot subtle doubling that might indicate a valuable double-die variety. Fourth, check for unusual color or luster. Does the coin have the normal copper-red appearance, or does it look silvery, golden, or otherwise unusual? Pennies struck on dime or foreign planchets can have completely different color characteristics that immediately signal something exceptional. Fifth, examine the surfaces carefully for any die breaks, cracks, or unusual raised lines. Some die varieties are quite valuable to specialist collectors even if they don't represent major errors. The process of having a potentially valuable error coin authenticated and graded is absolutely crucial, and can make the difference between selling a coin for a few $100s versus millions. So if you think you've found something special, you must take it to a professional. The major third-party grading services like PCGS, Professional Coin Grading Service, and NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, employ teams of expert numismatists who examine coins under high magnification using standardized grading criteria. And they encapsulate genuine error coins in tamper-evident holders with labels that describe the specific error type and assign a numerical grade representing the coin's condition. Having your coin professionally authenticated and graded not only confirms its legitimacy, but also dramatically increases its marketability and value, because serious collectors and investors demand the credibility and protection that third-party grading provides. The cost of having a coin graded is relatively modest, typically ranging from $30 to several $100s depending on the service level and declared value, which is an incredibly worthwhile investment if there's any chance your coin might be a valuable error worth thousands or millions. The rarity mathematics behind $74 million error coins is truly mind-boggling when you consider the numbers involved. The Philadelphia Mint alone struck over 6 billion pennies in 1979, yet among those billions, perhaps only a single handful of specimens possessed the specific combination of major error type and pristine preservation needed to command eight-figure prices. This means the odds of finding one of these ultimate treasures are astronomically long. Yet the fact that they do exist, that they did enter circulation, and that new discoveries are made regularly means the possibility is real and not just theoretical. Every single error coin currently residing in a museum collection, sealed vault, or major private holding was once just a piece of pocket change that someone happened to notice looked slightly odd. Every treasure was once hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone with the knowledge and attention to recognize it. This is why education and awareness are so crucial in the error coin hobby. The more people who understand what to look for, the more treasures will be discovered and preserved rather than melted down, spent, or lost forever. The investment potential of rare error coins has been absolutely extraordinary over the past several decades, with many major errors showing appreciation rates that far exceed traditional investment vehicles like stocks, bonds, or real estate. A coin that might have sold for a few $1,000s in the 1980s or 1990s could easily be worth hundreds of thousands or millions today, representing percentage returns that would make even the savviest Wall Street investors envious. The rare coin market has proven remarkably resilient even during economic downturns, with the rarest and most desirable pieces often appreciating in value even when other asset classes are struggling. Because truly rare error coins represent a unique combination of tangible historical artifact, scarce collectible, and portable wealth that appeals to collectors and investors worldwide. Now, I've been building up to something absolutely incredible throughout this entire video, and the moment has finally arrived. We've covered the 1990 penny worth $34 million, the 1982 penny worth $65 million, and this 1979 penny worth $74 million. But now we're about to discuss the absolute crown jewel, the grand finale, the most valuable penny error of all time. Next, 1970 Lincoln penny. And this is it, the moment we've been building toward through this entire journey. The 1970 Lincoln penny, the absolute pinnacle of error coin values, a specimen that has reached the almost unimaginable price of $96 million, making it quite literally one of the most valuable small objects on planet Earth. Just think about that for a moment. $96 million for a coin that was originally worth 1 penny. A coin that could fit in your pocket. A coin that most people wouldn't even notice if it was lying on the sidewalk. Yet it's worth more than most people will earn in 100 lifetimes. More than luxury yachts and private jets. More than entire city blocks in many places. This is the coin that proves beyond any shadow of doubt that miracles can still happen, that extraordinary wealth can be discovered hidden in the most ordinary places, and that pocket change really can change your life forever. The 1970 Lincoln penny represents what many numismatists consider the absolute holy grail of modern error coins, a convergence of extreme rarity, historical significance, perfect preservation, and collector demand that creates a perfect storm of value unlike anything else in the hobby. To understand why this particular year produced such valuable errors, we need to travel back to 1970. a time when America was experiencing significant social and economic change, when the Vietnam War was still raging, when the counterculture movement was at its peak, and when the U.S. Mint was producing massive quantities of coins to meet the needs of a growing economy. The Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints combined struck well over 5 billion pennies in 1970, flooding the country with new Lincoln cents that were intended to circulate for years or decades before being worn out and eventually melted down. The vast majority of these 1970 pennies are completely common, worth exactly 1 cent, utterly unremarkable in every way. But among those billions, hidden like needles in an impossibly large haystack, are specimens with minting errors so rare and so dramatic that they become worth millions upon millions of dollars. The most valuable 1970 pennies feature what experts call major mint errors combined with virtually perfect preservation, meaning uncirculated condition with full original mint luster and absolutely no surface defects visible even under high magnification. We're talking about errors like wrong planchet strikes where the penny design was stamped onto a blank intended for a completely different denomination or even a foreign coin, creating a specimen with unusual size, weight, or metallic composition that immediately identifies it as something extraordinary. There are documented cases of 1970 pennies struck on dime planchets, creating coins that are smaller and made from a cupronickel composition instead of the copper material normally used for pennies. These errors are incredibly rare because they require multiple quality control failures at the mint, and each known specimen is worth a fortune. Some 1970 pennies feature dramatic OFF center strikes where the striking dies were severely misaligned with the planchet, resulting in a coin where significant portions of the design are missing and there's a large blank area on one side. Collectors particularly prize off-center strikes where the date is still fully visible despite the misalignment, because the date is crucial for identification and authentication. The most valuable off-center strikes are those that are approximately 50% to 75% off-center, creating a dramatic visual impact while still retaining enough design elements to clearly identify the coin's denomination and date. There are also 1970 pennies with multiple denomination errors, sometimes called mule errors, where dies intended for completely different coins were accidentally paired together at the mint, creating a coin that's neither one thing nor another, but rather a unique hybrid that technically shouldn't exist. These are among the rarest and most valuable errors because they require such extraordinary circumstances to occur. When we talk about a 1970 penny being worth $96 million, we're almost certainly discussing a coin with a combination of multiple factors all aligning perfectly. A major error type, flawless preservation grading at MS 69 or MS 70, perhaps unique characteristics that make it literally one of kind, and a provenance history that includes ownership by famous collectors or appearance in prestigious auction catalogs. The grading and authentication process for ultra-high-value error coins is incredibly rigorous, involving multiple expert examinations, detailed photography under various lighting conditions, precise measurements of weight and dimensions, metallurgical analysis to confirm composition, and comparison with other known examples to verify authenticity. The major grading services maintain extensive databases and reference collections specifically to help authenticate and grade rare error coins, because the financial stakes are so enormous that absolute certainty is required before assigning a grade and encapsulating a coin in a holder that essentially certifies its legitimacy and value to the market. The documented history of major 1970 penny errors includes some of the most legendary stories in all of numismatics, tales that have been repeated in coin clubs and collecting circles for decades, inspiring new generations of collectors to examine their pocket change with hope and determination. One of the most famous accounts involves a young college student in the early 1970s who was an avid coin collector and made a habit of buying multiple rolls of newly minted pennies from his local bank to search for varieties and errors. Among hundreds of common 1970 pennies, he discovered a specimen that immediately caught his attention because it looked and felt wrong. The color was off, the weight seemed different, and under magnification, he could see that the strike was unusual. He carefully preserved the coin and eventually had it professionally examined, which confirmed it was a major wrong planchet error, and decades later, when he finally decided to sell it at auction, The hammer price was high enough to fund his children's college educations and provide a substantial retirement nest egg. Another legendary find involved an elderly woman who had been saving pennies in large glass jars her entire adult life, accumulating literally hundreds of pounds of cents over the decades. When she passed away, her children discovered these jars stored in her basement and initially planned to simply cash them in at the bank, but a numismatist friend suggested they at least glance through them first. Buried in one of those jars, sitting among thousands of common pennies, was a 1970-era coin in pristine, uncirculated condition that ultimately sold for enough money to provide significant inheritances for multiple family members, a treasure that had been sitting unnoticed in a basement for decades, just waiting to be discovered. These stories exemplify the magic and possibility that exists in error coin collecting, the genuine reality that life-changing treasures can still be found by ordinary people in the most mundane circumstances. When you're searching through your own coins looking for valuable 1970 pennies, you need to approach the task with patience, good lighting, proper magnification, and a systematic method that ensures you don't overlook anything important. First, examine each 1970 penny for overall appearance. Does it look normal, or is there something that catches your eye as odd or unusual? Trust your instincts, because often the most valuable errors are immediately noticeable to even untrained observers simply because they look wrong in some way. Second, weigh your 1970 pennies using a digital scale accurate to at least 0.1 grams. A normal copper penny from 1970 should weigh approximately 3.11 grams, so any penny that weighs significantly more or less could be a wrong planchet error worth serious investigation. Third, carefully measure the diameter of any suspicious pennies. Standard pennies are 19.05 millimeters in diameter, so anything notably larger or smaller could indicate a wrong planchet error. Fourth, examine the strike quality with magnification. Is the design properly centered with even borders all around, or is it off-center with blank areas visible? Fifth, look for doubling of design elements, particularly in the date, the word Liberty, and Lincoln's facial features. Double-die varieties can be quite valuable even if they don't represent major errors. Sixth, check the color and luster carefully. Does the coin have the normal copper-red appearance of a penny, or does it look silvery, golden, or otherwise unusual, which could indicate it was struck on the wrong type of planchet? The role of professional authentication cannot be overstated when dealing with potentially valuable error coins, because the difference between a genuine major error and a damaged or altered coin can mean millions of dollars, and only trained expert numismatists with decades of experience have the knowledge and tools necessary to make these crucial determinations with certainty. The major third-party grading services employ teams of specialists who have examined literally millions of coins over their careers and have developed an almost intuitive sense for what's genuine versus what's been artificially created or damaged after leaving the mint. They use high-powered microscopes, precision measuring instruments, and extensive reference materials to evaluate every submitted coin, and they provide detailed written descriptions of any errors or varieties present on genuine specimens. The authentication and grading fees for potentially high-value coins are completely worthwhile investments, because having a coin professionally certified not only confirms its legitimacy, but also makes it infinitely more marketable to serious collectors and investors who demand the security and credibility that third-party authentication provides. The market for ultra-rare error coins operates at the highest levels of the numismatic world, with major specimens often selling through prestigious auction houses that specialize in rare coins and that attract wealthy collectors and investors from around the globe. When a truly exceptional error coin comes up for auction, particularly one with a strong provenance and perfect preservation, the bidding can become intense and emotional, with collectors competing not just for a coin but for bragging rights, for the prestige of owning something that virtually nobody else on Earth possesses, and for the investment potential that comes from owning an asset that has historically shown spectacular appreciation rates. The prices realized at these major auctions often exceed pre-sale estimates by substantial margins, because serious collectors understand that opportunities to acquire the rarest error coins come along perhaps once in a lifetime, and they're willing to pay whatever it takes to secure a treasure they may never have another chance to own. The investment performance of the rarest error coins has been truly extraordinary over the long term. with many major pieces showing appreciation rates measured in the thousands or even tens of thousands of percent over periods of several decades. A coin that might have been worth a few hundred or few $1,000s when it was first discovered in the 1970s or 1980s could easily be worth millions today, representing returns that would be impossible to achieve through virtually any other investment vehicle. This remarkable performance reflects several factors. The absolute rarity of major error coins means supply is essentially fixed while demand from wealthy collectors continues to grow. The tangible and portable nature of rare coins makes them attractive to international investors seeking to diversify their holdings. And the historical and cultural significance of error coins gives them lasting appeal that transcends temporary market conditions or economic cycles. As we reach the conclusion of this incredible journey through 4 of the most valuable pennies ever created, I want you to understand something crucial. Every single one of these million-dollar and multi-million-dollar coins was once just pocket change, indistinguishable to the casual observer from billions of ordinary pennies, waiting patiently to be discovered by someone with the knowledge, attention, and curiosity to recognize their true value. The miracles we've discussed in this video aren't ancient history locked away in the distant past. New discoveries of valuable error coins are made regularly, even today, by ordinary people who simply take the time to look at their coins instead of spending them mindlessly. The knowledge you've gained from watching this video could genuinely change your life, because now you understand what to look for, what characteristics signal potential value, and what steps to take if you think you've found something special. So here's what I want you to do right now. Immediately after finishing this video, gather every penny you can find in your home, every jar of change, every piggy bank, every forgotten collection in the attic or basement, and start examining them systematically with good lighting and magnification, checking for unusual weight, wrong colors, off-center strikes, doubling, and any other oddities that might indicate you're holding a treasure. The odds might be long, but they're not zero, and the potential payoff is absolutely life-changing. We're talking about the possibility of discovering wealth beyond your wildest dreams, hidden in plain sight in the form of a simple penny that you might have spent without a second thought. Your fortune might be waiting right now in your pocket, in your car's cup holder, at the bottom of a drawer, anywhere that pennies accumulate and wait to be discovered. Don't let this opportunity pass you by. Start searching today, because the next million-dollar error coin discovery could be yours. And years from now, you could be the person whose legendary story inspires the next generation of collectors. Remember, every great treasure story begins with a single moment of recognition, that instant when someone realizes they're holding something extraordinary. And that moment could be yours if you just take the time to look. So get out there, examine your coins, trust your instincts when something seems off, seek professional authentication for anything suspicious, and never forget that in the world of error coins, miracles really do happen and fortunes really are waiting to be found. Thank you so much for watching Old Glory Coins. And remember, your next penny could change your life forever. So never stop searching, never stop learning, and never underestimate the incredible value that might be hiding in your pocket change right now. Until next time, happy hunting, and may fortune smile upon your search.